I'd like to welcome all of you this morning to our webinar series on accelerating coastal nature-based solutions. This webinar is part of a series where practitioners can explore and learn from case studies that showcase nature-based solutions for building coastal resilience that are community-driven and provide multi-benefits. These solutions, in turn, help further the goals of 30 by 30 and the Biden-Harris administration's America the Beautiful initiatives. We've already hosted part one of this webinar, which took place in January, and it can be found on our Coastal Quest website. In the chat, Lilia is going to go ahead and place a link to the a spot on our YouTube channel where you can pick that up. And today we'll be exploring part two of the series. But before we begin, I have a couple of announcements to make. So some housekeeping. First, this webinar is being recorded, as we shared. Coastal Quest may use the video footage recording during the webinar for educational or promotional purposes. The recording of the webinar will be available for viewing on the Coastal Quest website. And secondly, closed captioning of this webinar is available in multiple languages. To access closed captioning, click the closed caption and translation button at the bottom of your Zoom application and select your language of choice. We do have our chat open, but we encourage all attendees to ask questions of our speakers using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom application. This will allow our speakers the option to answer your questions online, and it helps keep us organized. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can throughout the session. Our objectives for today's webinar our objectives are to learn about different approaches to nature-based solutions and to promote coastal projects that are multi-benefit, community-driven, and equitable. You'll hear about tips and best practices, funding strategies, and where to find helpful resources. We'll have an amazing lineup of speakers who will be sharing case studies on launching new and early stage projects that use community-driven, nature-based solutions and provide multiple benefits to our communities, nature, and the climate. We hope this information is helpful to you and can be used to jumpstart your own projects to get them on the ground in your communities. Just a quick recap of or just a quick sharing of our agenda. Our agenda includes a brief introduction of Coastal Quest and our work to accelerate nature-based solutions. We'll then kick off today's topics with a presentation by our keynote speaker, George Lee from Greenlining the Block. This will be followed by our first two case study speakers, and then a short Q&A, just a couple questions there. And then we'll have our second two speakers present their case studies, followed by a longer Q&A session. And we do have a brief poll, which will be, we will not be sharing the results, just to keep that in. We'll be wrapping up today's webinar with a quick look at Coastal Quest's coastal funding database and information about a small grants funding opportunity that just opened on March 1st. We'll be sharing how you can apply to receive grant funding and technical assistance for new and early stage coastal nature-based solution projects. All right, let's get started. Here we go. So Coastal Quest, Kristen and I, my co-host here, and I will take a few minutes to tell you about Coastal Quest and our work accelerating nature-based solutions. So just to give you a bit of a foundation, Coastal Quest is a service-focused nonprofit based in Oakland, California. We work across the U.S. and internationally. Our driving force is to work with partners and accelerate solutions to build resilient coastal communities for people, nature, and climate. And you can visit us on our website, which Lily is placing in the chat. We have two overarching goals for our organization. We work to build multi-benefit solutions for healthy and resilient coasts. This focuses on protecting and enhancing nearshore marine, coastal intertidal, wetlands, and watershed habitat. It also includes the species in these zones, as well as areas of blue carbon significance. Our second overarching goal is to increase coastal resilience for vulnerable communities and economies. The focus of this work is with vulnerable and priority coastal communities, building multi-benefit solutions from the bottom up. This work addresses the capacity of the community, bringing into play public-private partnerships to bridge gaps and develop effective governance that breaks through funding inequities. All of our programs and efforts support both of these goals. And please feel free to reach out if you'd like to learn more about our work and how we can support your projects. Now I'd like to turn the webinar over to my colleague, Kristen Dawn, who will provide a short background on nature-based solutions and the work that we're doing before introducing our first speakers. Over to you, Kristen.
Thanks, Sadie. Hello, everyone. I'm Kristen Dawn, a director here at Coastal Quest and a project lead for our nature-based solutions for resilient coasts and communities work. Thanks, Sadie, for sharing an overview of today's agenda and providing some background on Coastal Quest. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to go a little bit deeper and share with you all about Coastal Quest's approach to achieving our goals and accelerating nature-based solutions. So Coastal Quest work is really aimed at accelerating the development and implementation of natural solutions for building coastal resilience. We're helping build a pipeline of community-driven projects by supporting communities and governments in developing and implementing multi-benefit nature-based solution projects that conserve, restore, and connect coastal lands and waters, that build coastal resilience in vulnerable coastal communities, particularly and with communities that are less resourced and underserved, BIPOC communities, and communities in need of environmental climate justice, as well as projects rooted in equity, and projects that really further the goals of the 30 by 30 global movement and the principles of the Biden-Harris administration's America the Beautiful initiative, whose goals are to conserve, restore, and connect 30% of lands and waters by the year 2030. So what exactly do we mean by multi-benefit coastal nature-based solutions? We mean projects that use natural solutions to build resilience for both people and nature, and that provide more than one benefit. So this would be a project that maybe reduces climate risk while also protecting biodiversity, or providing clean water while also increasing access to nature, or perhaps a project that improves public health while also protecting cultural resources. So our work at Coastal Quest and our approach is really based on a needs assessment we conducted back in 2022. We surveyed 179 coastal practitioners and conducted interviews with 21 leaders and groups to better understand what communities and governments need to support the development and implementation of multi-benefit coastal nature-based solution projects. And we heard a very clear demand for three particular things. One, we heard a need for funding and financial technical assistance. So this may be assistance with grant writing or grant management, or perhaps a fiscal sponsorship. We also heard a need for technical assistance with project planning, project coordination, and developing collaboration. And then we also heard a strong interest in communities of practice, where there would be opportunities for shared learning and networking, and where people could be part of a cohort. And so in 2023, we implemented a pilot to support community leaders, partners, and early stage projects. And on this slide here, highlighted in bold, are the results from our pilot that included Coastal Quest provided over $100,000 in small grants in 2023. We were a fiscal sponsor to 3 new projects. We provided technical assistance for more than 10 groups, which resulted in grant funding and plans for their projects. We developed a coastal funding database that's updated 2 times a month, where people can find the latest and greatest funding opportunities. And Lilia, at the end of today's webinar, will share with you all about where you can access that database to see what funding opportunities are currently available. We also supported 2 regional cohorts, and we hosted a series of webinars in the spring of 2023. And based on the success of our pilot, we've now secured funding and are continuing to move forward with this model and work over the next 2 years. I just want to share a little bit more from our pilot. Coastal Quest supported early stage projects and early stage leaders across the US West Coast, as well as in Alaska and Hawaii, by providing small grants, financial and fiscal sponsorship services, and networking opportunities, as well as providing technical assistance to add and build capacity to help move projects on to their next phase. So for example, we helped assess the feasibility of a National Marine Sanctuary nomination in Oregon. In our January webinar, you heard a case study from our staff, Natalie Bartel, about our work identifying opportunities for coastal land to achieve 30 by 30 goals and climate risk reduction through community engagement in Orange County. And in last year's webinar, we spoke about our work to support the development of water quality protected areas in California. So we also provided technical assistance and fiscal sponsorship to support 3 early stage leaders and their projects in their communities, including Shai Walker at Ninth Root, whom you'll hear from today about their multi-benefit wetlands restoration project in West Oakland. And this year, we are again offering small grants and technical assistance support through our Coastal Nature-Based Solutions Small Grants Program. So we've created a simple application process and are currently accepting applications now through April 16th. We're offering grants of $5,000 and technical assistance to support new and early stage projects. So at the end of today's webinar, Lilia will tell you a bit more about where and how you can apply to this grant opportunity. And she'll also share how and where you can access our coastal funding database, where we curate open funding opportunities that support coastal resilience work. And now it's time we hear from today's speakers on our webinar topic. So these community leaders will be helping us explore different approaches, tips, and resources for launching new and early stage projects. And we'll be starting with our keynote speaker, George Lee. George is the director of Greenlining the Block at the Greenlining Institute. He directs strategy and development, sub-grants, technical assistance, and capacity building for community-driven climate infrastructure projects in communities of color in California and beyond. He has over 10 years of experience in developing and optimizing equitable community-led park capital projects, as well as hands-on fabrication and construction management experience building public land art installations. He is a practical, professional activist for ensuring disadvantaged, marginalized communities have access to the healthy, promoting benefits of clean, safe public spaces and infrastructure. George will kick us off and talk about how Greenlining the Block supports early stage projects and community leaders, and share with us some of the key ingredients for project success. George's talk is titled When Visionary and Technician Manifest. So George, when you're ready, please share your screen and start your presentation.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here. Just give me 1 second to share my screen. Okay. It's so good to be here. Yeah, my name is George Lee, director at the Greenlining Institute. I am a coastal places lover. I do own a canoe and love to canoe, so feel like I belong here. So I'm going to talk about, just for 10 minutes or so, about when technical and visionary manifest. Okay, so I do a lot of work with community-led capital projects. I have for over a decade in Seattle and California. So just want a few points. So your team can achieve the near impossible. I want you to believe that. I've seen it happen. It seems near impossible, but your team can achieve the near impossible. And that work that you do will be the light that dispels the darkness. You know, these community-driven projects often come out of a feeling of being overwhelmed, of darkness, of not being enough amenities, and your work will dispel that. Your work is the light showing the way for the future. And I really have these three core strategies that I would ask you to consider prioritizing to progress your project steadily along. So these are the three priorities for steady progress on community-driven projects, early stage projects. Focus in four areas. Focus on site control, design development, capital stacking and fundraising, and team health. Number two, balance your technical and visionary team energy. And number three, get to 30% concept drawings with a budget. So I'll go into these in more detail. So number one, focus in four areas: site control, design, capital fundraising, and team organizational health. Number two, keep your team's work and energy balanced between technical and visionary. And number three, get to 30% concept design and with a budget. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an introduction to the Greenlining Institute and where we come from here in Oakland, California. So between 1934 and 1962, the federal government issued $120 billion in these innovative new fixed rate FHA home loans, and 98% of them went to white families and did amazing things for white families to build the middle class. But that was not equitable. And adjusted for inflation, that's about $1.3 trillion. And if we move forward in time, we see that we're still living in that legacy of redlining. And so that was redlining, and we still are living in redlining. If you look at the 30 map from 1937 of an Oakland redlining map determining who gets those innovative federal loans, up to the CalEnviroscreen tool, which is being used for federal funding allocations for equity, to the Oakland COVID-19 map, and you see direct correlations between where that federal investment went and where it did not go based on redlining. And the federal government explicitly at that time funded a segregated built environment and infrastructure. And we at the Greenlining Institute are working to greenline, to reverse redlining. So the Greenlining Institute works towards a future where communities of color can build wealth, live in healthy places filled with economic opportunity, and are ready to meet the challenges posed by climate change. And we've helped direct $800 billion to communities of color since 1993. So we're about a 60-person organization, and that's what we do. We direct investments to communities of color, and we pass policy to do that. Now, Greenlining the Block, which I direct, is an initiative within the Greenlining Institute to strengthen community-based organizations to advance their own climate justice neighborhood capital projects and to maximize all this federal and state investment that's happening. And this project is based in California and 4 cities in California, and then in 4 other states nationally. And we do pass-through funding, we have a seminar training, and we do coaching. So, and we've seen results. We've seen this type of work is, we've passed through around 4 million, and now we're seeing groups pull in about 40 million in money from that they've been able to get. So, we're dispelling the darkness. We're working together. So again, let's just go into these points I brought up at the beginning in a little more detail. So focus in on 4 areas. Capital projects are huge, long, and complex and demoralizing sometimes. But you just stay focused in 4 areas: site control, design development, capital stacking, fundraising from different sources, and team health. So this is it visualized. So you need a healthy organization. And then while you have that healthy organization on a capital project, on a big physical project, focus on your design development, your capital stacking, raising money, and site control. Okay, next point. Balance your technical and visionary team energy. So what we've noticed is when you are a community-driven project, when you are doing the near impossible, a lot of the time the energies that are rising to the surface to pull out of that darkness are visionary people, visionary energy. And as you start to get your bearings and on your feet and really start to get traction, it's important to balance out that visionary energy with what we call technical project manager energy. So if you think about it like this ancient Chinese symbol, the yin and the yang, um, everything in the world has two sides. And to think about your project team balancing this, and each has a little bit, but you need both to succeed. And so you need to think about this in terms of your people types and capacity. So in terms of the people on your team, how they are tasked and what their capacity is allowing them to do. Is that balanced between those two types of energy? And then their work activities. Is the work that you're focusing on for your project always conceptual, or is it always super technical and in the weeds? Or is it, is it balanced? Is it balanced between visionary and technical tasks and deadlines? And this is a crazy diagram. I have a background in design. I'm an artist, so I'm sorry for the crazy diagram. But basically, in the middle, you have all these the project. These projects can last 5 years. They have a million steps, and you need to just start cranking on it. And the visionary is this huge, this energy is envisioning, promoting, attracting, energizing, and hoping. They're this huge forward energy. And sometimes you lose energy, but this visionary energy attracts new energy. And they're just pushing forward the big vision. But on the blue on the bottom is your technical project manager energy that's about executing and deciding and solving and spending money and tracking progress. And this energy is very focused on breaking big things into small pieces and then executing every one of those small pieces. So breaking up the huge project into 4 quarters, and then each of those quarters into 5 or 6 steps. And you need both of these to really succeed on a project. So last point, get to 30% concept drawings with a budget. So let me explain. Design is different than planning. Planning is ideating and coming up with priorities of what you want to do generally. But design is really getting something from planning to construction. It's a very complex, messy process but you need to move forward. So 10%, you have an idea, 30%, that idea is a scale drawing on the ground. People have agreed on generally what they actually want. You can put a budget to it. And then you move through permitting, and then you move into construction. But this 30% is really this magic point. Because if you can get to 30%, you're investment ready. People are ready to invest in you because they can see a picture, they can see a budget. Your stakeholders are in because you've involved them in the design, and your team is primed. Your team health is primed to be doing a project. So you're ready to climb this capital cliff, to raise all that money to spend it on construction for your project and to get through these messy benchmarks of a capital project. So this is what 10% is. It's an idea, a general boundary of where you want to work. 30% in process are like big chaotic meetings where everyone's discussing and you have a designer facilitating or what you want to work on, and then boiling it all down into a scale drawing with a budget. And a nice, pretty picture to show the story. So again, these are your 3 priorities to focus on. Your community-led capital project can achieve the near impossible. I've seen it happen over and over again. Your work will be the light that dispels the darkness in your community that you want to fix, and you just need to prioritize those core strategies. And your team can do this. And this is a project that has a grand opening next month in Seattle. It started out as volunteer-led, just like a fiscally sponsored group. This is the group before. This is the group after on their finished construction project. This is a $2 million park project, super complicated. This is picnic tables during a community event, and then a permanent shelter and a picnic table. And then this is the rundown beach that people didn't feel a lot of pride in or using, is really hard to use. And then this is a beach with a shelter and mural and a kayak launch and juvenile salmon habitat going in that everyone got behind. And this park started with no, and then now they're showing the way. So you can do this, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, George. Those are great tips for folks who are considering new projects or in the early stages of their project. So if you have a question for George, please feel free to type it into the Q&A window located at the bottom of the Zoom app. And George may answer your question directly in the chat, or we will try to get to your question verbally during our Q&A session. So our next two speakers will both be sharing case studies from California. They are Shai Walker at Ninth Root and Alex Lunine with Sustainable Solano. First, we're going to hear from Shai, who is the executive director and founder of Ninth Root. Shai was born and raised in Oakland, California. Ninth Root, which was founded by Shai and fiscally sponsored by Coastal Quest, was founded in January of 2023. However, Ninth Root's main project, which is called Sacred Spaces, has been in the works since July of 2021, springing from an idea during Shai's time in the Oakland Shoreline Leadership Academy program. Ninth Root aims to redefine the relationship between nature, mental wellness, and spirituality, particularly within communities that have been historically marginalized. By creating safe havens that honor cultural heritage, celebrate diversity, and address environmental challenges, they are working towards a more inclusive and sustainable future for Oakland. Today, Shai will be sharing with us about launching the Sacred Spaces Project. They are in their community's vision and engagement to restore a degraded wetland in urban West Oakland to bring multiple benefits to their community. Shai's talk today is titled Tappin, the Magic of Community Healing Through the Spirit and Nature. Shai, when you're ready, please share your screen and start your presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Christian. Thank you, Coastal Quest, for hosting this event. I'm Shai Walker. I'm director and creator of Ninth Root, project entitled Sacred Spaces, as Kristen mentioned. And I'm here to talk about the magic of spiritual healing through nature and harnessing the power of community partnership. So who we are, Ninth Root is a community-driven organization dedicated to fostering environmental stewardship and resilience in marginalized communities here in Oakland. So what we do, we create nature-based solution projects that address climate change impacts, promote sustainable practices, and empower communities to thrive amidst environmental challenges. In the embrace of nature sanctuary, where ancient secrets in the gentle caress of breeze carries the promise of renewal, lies the magic of healing. In our shared moments of connection, where hearts converge in the rhythm of the earth, that's where true transformation unfolds. Through an alchemy of community partnership, we unlock boundless potential, healing and weaving together the threads of resilience and hope. Together, we cultivate spaces of belonging where every voice is heard, every story honored, and every journey celebrated. In this dance between sky and soul, between laughter and tears, we discover the profound healing power of nature's embrace. It's here amidst the towering trees and streams that we find solace, strength, and timeless wisdom of interconnectedness. We embark on the journey of healing, guided by an enduring spirit of collaboration and compassion. In this union of nature and community, we unearth a sacred magic of transformation, illuminating a path towards wholeness and well-being. A couple of big questions Ninth Root asks as we plan and design our spaces is how can connecting with nature contribute to our overall well-being? And our answer showed up. Connecting with nature can reduce stress, improve mood, enhance overall mental health by providing a sense of peace and tranquility. especially away from the daily pressures of urban life. Studies have shown that spending time in nature and natural environments can lower cortisol levels, boost immune function, and increased feelings of happiness and relaxation. Then we ask, what role does community partnership play in promoting healing and resilience? Community partnerships are essential for creating supportive networks, sharing resources, and fostering a sense of belonging and social connection. By working together, united communities can address common challenges, build resilience, and promote healing on a collective level. You might ask, what is spiritual healing? Our definition, as it refers to the process of connecting with nature and tapping into the transformative energy to heal the body, mind, and soul. Some benefits and importances that we see are fostering inner peace, emotional balance, and holistic well-being, promoting a sense of harmony with oneself and the natural world, especially in today's fast-paced, environment. Spiritual healing offers a sanctuary for individuals to retreat, recharge, and connect with their inner selves. 4 pillars of community partnership that we find useful in our planning and in community engagement activities is collaboration. By fostering these relationships and sharing resources, we actually amplify our impact. Through unification, joining forces, we are able to create an inclusive and accessible space for spiritual exploration and healing. Through that, we can empower each other. By transforming spaces, we can support a greater sense of inclusivity and ownership, which leads us to the overall vision. By manifesting together a future with opportunity, we can embed a strategic roadway for change. So here's the magic. Healing, of course. Nature is a powerful healer, offering solace, tranquility, and renewal for those who seek it. Connecting is another. When we immerse ourselves in nature and community, it facilitates a deep connection to the divine, providing profound insight and spiritual awakening. Through that, we're protecting our culture and natural landscapes, thus ensuring the future seekers of spiritual healing will have access to these same transformative experiences. And through all this, we are enhancing our life. Through thoughtful design and stewardship, we can create sacred spaces that invite reflection, contemplation, and renewal. In conclusion, the impact from this type of thought, we see mental health and emotional well-being, physical health benefits, community connection, environmental stewardship, spiritual growth, and renewal. In closing, the magic of spiritual healing through nature is a profound journey of self-discovery and connection to the divine. By fostering these relationships with our communities and nurturing the preserving and enhancement of our natural landscapes, we can create sacred spaces that offer the solace, the rejuvenation, and spiritual enlightenment to all who seek them. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Shai, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, Shai. And next we'll hear from Alex Lunine from Sustainable Solano. Alex has worked with Sustainable Solano since 2022 as a Community Resilience Program Manager. His work has focused on climate resilience in the city of Suisun and on air quality in the city of Fairfield, which are located in Solano County in the San Francisco Bay Area in California. We're excited to learn from Alex about engaging local community members and community youth in decision-making and in the development of nature-based solutions from his work in Solano County. Alex's talk is titled Building Climate Resilience in Suisun. Alex, when you're ready, please share your screen and start your presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction, for giving me the opportunity to share a bit about Sustainable Solano's work today. And share the screen. Perfect, yeah. So, today I'm going to be sharing a bit about the work that Sustainable Solano has done in, working with the city of Suisun and community members of Suisun to build and enhance their climate adaptation planning and integrate nature-based solutions into that planning. And in particular, I'm going to be kind of going through a timeline of our work in Suisun and highlighting and focusing specifically on how Sustainable Solano has used smaller scale green space projects to get community members to engage with the idea of larger scale nature-based solutions, and also talk a bit about how we've integrated and tried to empower youth voices through this process as well. So just to start off as to, why Suisun in particular is, a focal point for us in terms of, climate resilience. In 2020, a study called Adapting to Rising Tides identified Suisun as being particularly vulnerable to the impacts of rising sea levels due to climate change. Suisun is built on top of the Suisun Marsh, which is the largest brackish water marsh on the West Coast. And, as a result, obviously has great access to, a beautiful and unique ecosystem. But with that also brings in the potential issue of, flooding, from the marsh. The marsh is, connected directly back out to the Pacific Ocean. And, as sea level rise out there, despite Suisun being, relatively inland, we're still going to be dealing with those impacts. And additionally, just in terms of the more, environmental equity side of things, Suisun was rated as one of the most diverse cities in the entirety of the United States. And the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment has also identified Suisun as being in the 67th percentile of cumulative community impact, which is sort of like a score that they gave based off of a combination of more sociological and environmental population characteristics. And just as a bit of a map of what these types of climate impacts and flooding impacts will look like, and why we need nature-based solutions in Suisun. You could see at 3 feet of increased water level, the entirety of downtown Suisun, including neighborhoods, its sort of main economic hub, a school, churches, will be entirely flooded over at 3 feet. And due to the combination of accounting for that rising sea level, but also accounting for storm runoff and king tides, it is likely that Suisun will need to might potentially deal with the impact of 3 feet of increased water level before even the projected sea level rise projections from climate change alone. Great. So our work in Suisun started in 2021, and our main focus, at this time was on, engaging the community around the idea that Suisun is going to need to deal with the impacts of flooding, start preparing for the impacts of flooding, to begin with. There wasn't a whole lot of community buy-in at this point, and that study I mentioned earlier wasn't particularly well, known or regarded. So, that's kind of where we started at our ground zero. So we engaged with the community in a few different ways. First, organizing what we called flood walks, which are basically flood walking tours of the projected impact areas, and taking folks, through at sort of like that eye level to talk about the impacts of, climate change and flooding, and also begin to, get that community buy-in, get them engaged, talk about, future next steps and solutions. Additionally, we organized a environment climate festival, bringing in community partners, in a large event downtown, again, just to further engage the community. And then finally, in 2021, we sort of capped off the year with that first smaller scale project I had mentioned at the beginning. This project took the form of an urban food forest at a, at a residential, property, where the homeowners are on the front line of, flooding in Suisun. they're actually in this neighborhood. The projections are actually at 2 feet of increased water levels when this neighborhood will begin to feel the impacts of flooding and rising water levels in Suisun. And this project, had a permaculture focus, talking about how we could, utilize, native plants and, environmentally friendly landscaping to mitigate some of the impacts of, flooding in these communities. So again, we got volunteers to, help install this project. The community came out and, helped do it over the course of a few weekends. And again, kind of offered a bite-sized example of what nature-based solutions could look like in the city. This takes us to 2022, or the beginning of 2022 rather, where we used this outreach and community engagement to begin planning out the development of a community action plan to address flooding and climate needs in Suisun. So we partnered with the Nature Conservancy to facilitate this meeting and workshop, and coordinated it with a variety of different, governmental, organizations, residents, and community members to put this meeting together. And ultimately, this meeting took place in June of 2022 and had around a combination of 20 participants to get this plan together. And this plan is being actively utilized by the city in terms of climate change planning and sort of paving a path forward. At the end of the year, we integrated a youth internship into our outreach, and our interns were great. They were kids who grew up in the area, had an intimate knowledge of, what the city was like, the flooding that the city already deals with. And they helped us, share out that action plan and do a base of a lot of our outreach materials. And additionally, they led their own flood walk where they're able to lend their voice and experience living in Suisun and growing up in Suisun. And then additionally, we had a second environmental day, or festival, which took the form of a community forum where we got feedback from that action plan that we did in June. And additionally, but did another smaller scale green infrastructure project. In 2023, we partnered with the Green Belt Alliance to build up a hotspot profile for Suisun, which again allowed us to kind of put a spotlight on Suisun as a unique sort of city in terms of the fight or push for climate resiliency. Which takes us to the end of 2023 and today, where we're partnering up with Coastal Quest and BayCan to begin designing and working with the city to design larger scale nature-based solutions. And in particular, I wanted to highlight how our youth are going to be taking a larger role in this project, namely in terms of helping to actually facilitate community meetings and participate in those larger community meetings to ensure that a youth voice is heard and maintained in planning documents and planning for the city. So again, thank you so much. This is just a sort of quick overview and timeline of our work in Suisun. Thanks, y'all.
All right, thank you to both Shai and Alex. And before we move on to our next two speakers, we've got time for one or two questions for either George, Shai, or Alex. And just a reminder, if you have questions, you can type it into the Q&A chat function at the bottom of the Zoom app. And if we're not able to get to your question during this break, our speakers are invited to answer them over the chat, or we will do our best to address them at the next Q&A session. I'm going to hand it over to Sadie, who will be fielding questions right now.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you to our speakers for this presentation. This has been fantastic. Lots of great learning and some really great tools in there. We're just going to have a couple minutes for questions. So as they're building in our Q&A area, I wanted to ask both Ninth Root and Sustainable Solano, what unique approaches do you take in fostering community engagement and environmental stewardship? Those are some of the areas I think that can be really challenging to develop and build. And we were wondering if there were some tools there that Alex or Shai would like to share. And you can go ahead and come off mute. Yeah, go ahead, Shai.
Yeah, I can speak on that a little bit. I think a lot of it is showing face. Like I show up to places, whether it's after school programs, local high schools, especially in certain communities who don't have as much access to these type of events and educational programs. And I talk with teachers. I kind of just make sure I'm seen. I think that's a big part of engaging that way. In addition to that, once I do make that connection, then I start working on trying to engage with the youth through presenting to them about what we're working on and then setting up field trips to get those classrooms out to the site, out to the project, and having a hands-on day with them, whether that be them learning about educational aspects far as like the ecology and different techniques they can use out on the shoreline, or if it's more of a hands-on cleanup day where they're getting kind of muddy and dirty, or making it a design tour where they get a chance to use a lot of brain power and think about how they want their environments to look. So I think the trajectory is like showing up, setting up, and then getting out there. That's been a huge it's been helping me engage deeper for sure.
Thank you, Shai. And Alex, would you like to add from your perspective?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely, agree with Shai that, being in the community and, like having those opportunities is huge. And in particular, I guess 2 points. So first, having really just like interactive and like projects where the community can kind of get their hands dirty and be actively involved um, has been like huge in terms of developing that stewardship. So for example, those smaller scale projects, those green space projects I mentioned, when folks are digging swales, and like are able to kind of like learn firsthand how different plants help mitigate some of the impacts of flooding, or how building up berms and levees. It's like having that sort of hands-on experience is really valuable. And then on the youth side of things, obviously same, providing them those opportunities, but then also providing them opportunities to be creative in how they're sort of expressing and sharing out their vision for climate resilience in their community. It not in our air quality work, we've had students do projects where they will envision specific areas of the city and reimagine them to be more sustainable, to be more air quality positive, by doing like street redesign. So having those projects where they're able to be creative and share their vision for their city is also really valuable.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Shai. That's great. Really helpful. And I did just want to ask a question to George. You really created a recipe of these are the different pieces, these are the different buckets to put together. And I was wondering, when you're looking across your portfolio of projects that have really supported nature-based solutions, what are some of the key ingredients that you see that ensure that success? And I know you spoke about the balance and the ratios, but if there are any other additional pieces that you're like, this really, if there's a project that comes to mind, that this was really successful because, and it was something outside of the box or something different that might apply to other projects.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, having a recipe sounds easy. It's more like I guess places to try to stay focused on, but every project will be different. But yeah, thanks. I think a project that comes to mind about nature-based solutions is that project I showed, Beersheba Park, waterfront improvements in Seattle. They're on a lake with Chinook salmon, endangered juvenile Chinook salmon. and Washington State, which really prioritizes, partially because of indigenous legal rights, in large part, fish and fishing rights and fish conservation. So there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money for fish, for salmon. And so, ironically, this was like an equity park, sacred spaces project, really, for the community. But we kind of kept our feelers out there, and our first grant, large, construction, large planning grant of a 250,000 that grew into a 500,000 grant that really started our ball rolling, because those early funders are hard to find, was from a salmon funding agency. The county flood agency was funding for anything that would create habitat for juvenile salmon. And then we were able to work that in without compromising community interests. And so I think equity and environmental funding can be partners. So I guess that's just keep your feelers out there, work with the government, and work with yourself and your philanthropists. Yeah.
Thank you, George. It's really helpful. I think at this point, we will have an opportunity for a longer Q&A a little later on. But thank you for these thoughtful answers to the questions. I do see a question in our Q&A. Thank you so much. Richard, we can talk a little bit about funding in a bit. So I think what I'll do right now is pass it back over to Kristen, who can introduce us to our next two case studies. And then we'll have another Q&A session after that.
Sounds great. And yeah, just a reminder, anyone feel free to be entering in your Q&A questions into the Q&A chat. But our next two speakers will be sharing their work from Puerto Rico and Ohio. So please meet Kevin Shockey with Ahora and Ivanka Marie Hall with the Northeast Ohio Black Health Coalition. So first, we're going to hear from Kevin Shockey from Ahora. So Kevin has lived in Puerto Rico for nearly 30 years with his wife and 3 daughters. He formed Ahora in 2021 with a focus on sustainable and resilient agriculture and working with the barrio, or municipality, of Carit in Guayama, Puerto Rico. Since 2017, Carit has suffered 4 major hurricanes and an earthquake. There are many challenges in this area, including crumbling roads, food shortages, power outages, water contamination, flooding, and loss of biodiversity. But Kevin's vision includes nature-based solutions, community farming, stopping poor development, and fighting for renewable energy through engaging and empowering his community. He is a member of the Anthropocene Alliance, and he's also a strong advocate for free and open source software and comes from a computer and science technology background. So today, Kevin will be sharing his vision for it and his insights from an early stage project to build ridge to reef resiliency through restoration work in the forested mountains of Carit. So Kevin's talk is titled From Zero to Climate Justice. So Kevin, when you're ready, please go ahead and share your screen and start your presentation.
Oh, on mute, I think still, Kevin.
Let's go ahead and unmute Kevin for him, Lilia.
Oh,
Here we go.
sorry.
There we go. Now we can hear you, Kevin.
You can hear me now. Okay.
Great.
All right. And I can move it from here. Excellent. All right. All right. So here we go. Hola, it's great to be here. Thank you, Coastal Quest, for the invitation. Ahora Inc. is a 501(c) registered in Puerto Rico that formed after hurricanes Irma and Maria hit the island in 2017. Both storms were Category 5 before making landfall. In 2023, we were fortunate enough to win a coastal resilience grant from NIFWIF. Our project, Ridge to Reef Resiliency, focuses on disadvantaged communities in Barrio Carite, Guayama, Puerto Rico. We assembled multiple partners from the government, academia, community organizations, and others. We aim to create a plan where the community identifies and prioritizes up to 10 green infrastructure projects. These sites will be ready for assessment, design, and further funding. I want you to think about the state of Rhode Island. Puerto Rico is roughly the same size. With the hurricanes in 2017, NOAA reported 70,000 landslides in Puerto Rico within a 2-week period. The discrepancy between the government's proclamation in 2018 that we were open for business and the devastation that lingers was and continues to be our biggest motivator. El Yunque National Rainforest is one of the main attractions for visitors to Puerto Rico. It's great, but Carite State Forest was always my favorite. With the turquoise waters of Charco Azul, trails and recreational areas, it became a playground for my family. As you can see here, the park still lies in ruins. To understand our challenges, you need to internalize the weird situation we find ourselves in. In 2006, Puerto Rico announced that it was unable to pay $73 billion worth of government bonds. How did this happen? Well, in 1900, the US enacted the Foraker Act to give citizenship to Puerto Rico. It also removed any fiscal guardrails like those that protect states from running up so much debt. In 2018, the Promesa Act came along to balance our budget and ensure payments to our bondholders. La Junta, as we call them, or the Fiscal Oversight and Management Board, is composed of unelected officials who decide our budgets and negotiate with bondholders. Recently, they negotiated several transportation bonds, and now we will have toll increases every year for the next 40 years. What else does this legacy situation produce? Recently, the GAO reported that in the 6 years since Hurricanes Irma and Maria, Puerto Rico had spent less than 10% of more than $23 billion in recovery funds. I ask you, would that happen in your district, in your county, in your state? You know why it wouldn't? Because if you live in one of the 50 states, you have 2 voting senators and a variety of voting representatives. We have none. Without a doubt, the Anthropocene Alliance, or A2, has been the biggest influence in our path to a coastal resilience grant. A2 is the largest coalition of frontline organizations fighting for climate and environmental justice. As a member of A2's Leadership Council, I've heard horror stories from communities all over the nation. Reaching out to all of you, I want you to know that you're not alone. Your struggles join a chorus of voices seeking climate justice. Don't ever relent in your struggles. With a diverse community sharing best practices, we can innovate faster than these times demand. A couple of fun facts about A2. Membership continues to be free. They provide annual grant opportunities, and they write proposals for communities. Yes, you heard that right. Unlike other nonprofits, they have dedicated grant writers. Last year, I applied for a lot of grants, including the one A2 wrote. I ended up winning 4 out of 9. Sadly, only the NFWIF grant resulted in funding for Ahora. 2 other wins were to advance to the finals of a grant. I wrote so much that about halfway through, I got bored. So I decided to add generative AI into the mix to spice things up. I tried dozens of tools, but the ones that made a difference were Claude AI, OpenAI, custom GPTs, and Semantic Scholar. My final winning grant was submitted on behalf of a partner. It was near the end of the year when we found a SARA grant that was perfect for them. The problem, we only had a few weeks to submit. Dun, 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 dun. Generative AI to the rescue. I wrote nearly the whole proposal using a combination of OpenAI and Claude. This was no copy paste. This was a repetitive process, and I improved the grammar and verified all the technical components using search. I used the site semanticscholar.org to find supporting research. If you're familiar with Google Scholar, this is the same but powered by AI. So, our most important lesson came from participating in the A2 grant process. Their leadership started right away by lining up potential partners. This led to us receiving 4 letters of support. We are now copying this process for the EPA Community Change Grant opportunity, reiterating, accumulate letters of support quickly, then leverage them in your outreach campaigns and negotiations to secure new partners. The one thing that the A2 process didn't do was prepare us for winning the grant. Having a grant in hand and needing to hire staff is a great problem to have, but I just wish we had started the hiring process earlier. To achieve our vision of a food sovereign Puerto Rico, we believe that it involves a combination of green infrastructure, hurricane-proof greenhouses, AI, and robotics. Building capacity around these anchors are the future of food on the island. The biggest challenges that we faced is apathy. There's a famous expression here, and it goes like this: Si no hay pan, hay galletas. Translating it literally, it means that if there's no bread, then eat crackers. But it means something else too. It is an expression of resignation. More bluntly, it means that there is always another way, which is devastating when you're looking for allies. Even a compelling story falls flat when you're okay with just getting by on whatever you have. The other one is the status quo. The ugly step cousin of apathy is status quo. Imagine trying to change the hearts and minds of people resigned to their fate. As horrible as Maria was, there's always the next hurricane season to look forward to. With scientists discussing a Category 6 hurricane, I'd like to share my conclusion. What I have noticed through A2 and the news is that we continually fall victim to a lack of imagination. Let's take this year as an example. All predictions point to a transition from El Niño to La Niña, which will increase hurricane activity this season. Awesome. Even worse, it's too late to do much about it. Before Maria, I had neighbors who believed that the damage from the storm would be like those of the past. Time after time, we see the unpredictability of our climate delivering deadly results. Do not be lulled into believing that the storms of the past will be anything like those to come. In conclusion, climate change sucks. Puerto Rico has been thrust onto the front line of the fight for survival. We have frequent dust storms from the Sahara, our shorelines are disappearing, and nowadays a simple tropical storm can bring catastrophic flooding. For Ahora, we will not stand for the injustice that confronts the island. We will not rest until the playgrounds of my children become the pathways to the imagination that they once were. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
You're welcome.
And now we will hear from Ivanka Marie Hall. Ivanka is the Executive Director of the nationally recognized Northeast Ohio Black Health Coalition. Ivanka received a Master of Public Administration from Texas Southern University and a Bachelor of Arts from Notre Dame College. She's a proud graduate of John Marshall High School in Cleveland, Ohio, and the Cleveland Plain Dealer named her the homegrown hero for her work addressing food insecurity. She's a nationally recognized and awarded health disparities expert. She has also been appointed to the EPA's National Justice Advisory Committee and there serves as the chair for the Farm Workers and Pesticides Work Group. She's an activist, a leader, an influencer, humanitarian, and speaker who is deeply impassioned and involved in social justice activities locally and at the national level. Today, Ivanka will be sharing her insights as a community leader on building trust, tapping into a community's history, and how a focus on community health drives multiple benefits to people, nature, and the climate. Her talk is titled Building Urban Community Capacity to Respond to Climate Change. So Vanka, thank you so much, and please share your screen and get started.
Thank you. So for us, it is important for, I thank everybody that came before me, because you made it easy for me, because you talked about all the things that I don't have to talk about. So my work of the Northeast Ohio Black Health Coalition is to create equity in the African American community, addressing the cumulative impact of racial, economic, environmental, and social justice inequities in education, employment, housing, and health. And we do all of that by working to educate, advocate for, and empower the community. So for us, this whole thing around talking about resilience goes back to historical. So these are my great-great-grandparents. This is my great-great-grandfather, John Pinckney Boston. He was born on December the 4th, 1873, and he passed away on May the 19th, 1961. And that is his wife. That is Amanda Little Boston. She was born on June the 15th, 1878, and she passed away on July the 24th, 1966. I know enough about my family's history to know who my great-great-great-grandparents were, and my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather were. And so for me, it's important. My family's, I come from a long line of master craftsmen and farmers. And so when my grandfather passed away, my great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, his obituary listed him as a Negro farmer. And I know that Amanda, from what I've heard by all accounts, could do wonders with making sure that she made things last. In our past, we prepared for resiliency. We prepared for emergencies. We made sure that we had things in stock in our family, so that if something came, we had food that was canned and things that could help us to get past the tough times. What has happened so much in our community is that we've gotten away from the past. And so what I want us to do is learn from the past as we take our plans into the future around resiliency and around why it's important for us to make sure that our community is able to adapt to change and to bounce back from different climate issues. And so what I know for a fact, and the work that we do around health disparities, is that African Americans are plagued with persistent environmental disparities that have existed for centuries, from injuries caused by lead poisoning to the devastating effects of atmospheric pollution, infectious disease, and industrial waste. Americans of color are harmed by environmental hazards in staggeringly disproportionate numbers, and this has impacted their health compared to their white counterparts and the population as a whole. And so we talk about these cumulative impacts for my agency. And so these are the things that my predecessors talked about in their presentations around this environmental media. How do we look at the air, the land, and the water? And then the non-chemical stressors, the things that are going on in the community, the social determinants of health. So these are the things that impact us, what we were born into, learn, work, play, worship, and age together. So these are the things that impact our communities as a whole. And so it's important for us to make sure that we are understanding about our built, our natural, and our social environments, and how they are affecting our individuals and our communities in both positive and negative ways. And so these things are referred to as our cumulative impacts. And that's one of the things that the EPA talks about a lot around cumulative impacts. And so if you start seeing grants with language around cumulative impacts, they're talking about what's going on with your air, land, and water. So this is the Cuyahoga River. So this is them putting out the fire on the Cuyahoga River. Cleveland, November the 1st, the blaze destroyed 3 tugs, 3 buildings, and the shipyard. But these 2 gentlemen, at the top is a former mayor, the late Carl Stokes, and then his brother is the late Congressman Louis Stokes. Why it's important in the historical context for me when I'm talking to my community about resiliency, and why it's important for us to talk about history, is I want them to know the historical impact that the African American community has had on the environment. So Cleveland Mayor Carl Stokes was the first African American mayor of a major U.S. city, and Congressman Louis Stokes, they were integral in the passage of the Clean Water Act in 1972. And most people don't realize that. After the Cuyahoga River fire, we had fires that had preceded that. So we had fires that happened in 1868, 1883. So we had all of these fires, but the one that caught the most attention was 1969. And so for us, it helped to catapult the issue around environment and why it was so important for us to make sure that we're looking at protecting our waters and protecting our waterways. I live on the Great Lakes. And so what also their advocacy led to the establishment of the EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, which is established in 1970. So we never talk about the role of African Americans when we talk about environment. We make it look like the community is so far removed from environment. And because the community doesn't know, it's important for me as I'm doing talks with the groups that we're working with our faith in our leaders. And our leaders are not like politician leaders, these are community leaders. It's important for me to talk to them about the historical piece because understanding the backstory of how we got to where we are helps us to build trust. And trust is the way we can move forward. Without trust, we can't move anything forward. And that the first Earth Day celebration took place on April the 22nd, 1970. And so that is important in this work. The other thing that we talk about is we talk about environmental justice and environmental races, but we also have two African-American men who were very instrumental in this work, Dr. Benjamin Chavis on the left and Dr. Robert Bullard on the right. Dr. Bullard is a professor at Texas Southern University. I'm a graduate of Texas Southern University. He played an integral role in the development of the environmental justice movement. So Dr. Bullard is considered the father of environmental justice, and he's currently the Distinguished Professor of Urban Planning and Environmental Policy at Texas Southern, and an award-winning author of some 18 books. If you have not read his books, you have to. If you have not met him, he's phenomenal. Dr. Bullard states that eliminating racism and classism, in addition to environmental degradation, is necessary to make sure that communities are sustainable and livable. His vision of communities where every individual has access to safe water, food, and green space. And so that's important because I think that we all want to say that should be our vision, but that's not the vision for everybody. When we look at how policies are made and how some of the policies totally disproportionately impact those areas that have been redlined, it's important for us to know the why it's important for us to know about redlining, the impact of redlining, and why we see such conditions in the urban areas right now. So it's not a result of what the people are doing now, it's a result of what has happened in the past that's coming forward that has still impacted the way we live. The phrase environmental racism was coined by civil rights leader Dr. Benjamin Chavis in 1982. He was considered the godfather of the environmental justice movement. He defined it as the intentional placing of polluting and waste facilities in communities primarily populated by African Americans, Latinos, indigenous people, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, migrant farmers, and low-income workers. And that's important for us to know, like when we're looking at environmental racism, you know, who are we looking at? Who is it impacting the most? So environmental racism refers to unequal access to clean environment and basic environmental resources based on race. Communities of color are disproportionately victimized by environmental hazards and are far more likely to live in areas with heavy pollution. And not just heavy pollution that are closer to the urban core, but right along our water lines, which are normally right where marginalized communities live, you know, because it only has become you know, passe recently for people to live near the water. Like it's become a great thing to be near the water, but usually when you looked at where urban dwellers lived, they lived near where the water sources were, and they've been kind of like pushed out, and those sources have been, those communities have been changed. For Healthy People to 2030, they also talk about this whole promotion of healthy environments to improve health. For us, we look at that a lot. Healthy People 2030 focuses on reducing people's exposure to harmful pollutants in the air, the water, the soil, food, materials, and homes and workplaces. And environmental pollutants can cause health problems like respiratory diseases, heart disease, and some types of cancer. So it's important for us to understand those, and that people with low incomes are more likely to live in polluted areas and have unsafe drinking water. That's important, particularly when we're talking about the Great Lakes and how do we make sure that we are protecting it at all costs. Children and pregnant women are a higher risk for health problems related to pollution, and laws and policies to reduce different types of pollution can also help prevent many serious health problems and death, going back to what we talked about, this social determinants. And so if you look at this, you look at the tree, you see all the things that are going on, and then you see the things that are going on in the environment. And then, you know, those are the things that are below the surface. So those are the things that we don't talk about. And I think that because we are here out on the Great Lakes, we don't talk about the Great Lakes. We talk about other things, but not exactly how the Great Lakes impact our community. For us, it is important in the work that we do for us to build trust with our community, particularly when we're working with our faith and our leadership in our communities. But it's also important for us to make sure that we are talking to our youth. We have a program called Teen Truth, which actually talks to youth about advocacy and how they can advocate for different things in their community. But it's also important for us to make sure that we're using the historical context to help people understand why resiliency is so important to our communities. Because if we can take the things that my grandfathers, my great-great-grandparents used in order for them to live, they lived in South Carolina on the coast. And so they understood the importance of making sure that they protected those water sources, that we use that same information today in order for us to protect our communities that are living in vulnerable areas. And I thank you all for your time.
A really big thank you to both Kevin and Ivanka. So interesting and informative and inspirational. And so now I'm going to hand it over to Sadie, who's going to tell us, she's going to lead us through a very brief poll. And I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions before we wrap up with some final conclusions today.
Yes, thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you to our speakers for sharing your knowledge, your time with us today. Before we move to our Q&A session, we do have a couple questions for the audience. Lilia, if you can please launch our poll. This is a poll. We won't be sharing results here directly, so you'll see a poll pop up on your screen. And if you could share a little bit of information about your experience with us today and some of the topics that you're looking to learn about in the future and future webinars as well. That'll be really, really helpful to us. The Q&A is open. So once you've completed the poll, please go ahead and type questions into the Q&A option. It's at the bottom of your Zoom application. And you can go ahead and type these in. Speakers, you're welcome to pick up questions there. Some of you already have been doing so, which is great, giving people answers to their questions. If you have a question you'd like to ask verbally, go ahead and raise your hand and we can have you unmute yourself and ask the question verbally to the group. Otherwise, we're also happy to read the question for you. So I'll give you just a few more moments here for our poll. And we can leave that poll open while people are going across and entering questions as well. Okay. All right, well, that's just wrapping up. We can just keep that open so you can continue to answer the poll just for a few more minutes there. And there's a question in our Q&A related to Puerto Rico. So this is for Kevin from Dwight Owens. And Dwight, if you're on the line and you do want to raise your hand, we can go ahead. You're welcome to answer the question out loud, or I can also read it for you. I'll go ahead and read it, and you're welcome to jump in with more pieces. So this is for Kevin from Dwight Owens. What is the most essential key to improving hurricane resilience in Puerto Rico? And Kevin, if you'd like to share
Yes.
some thoughts. That's a tricky one.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty simple question. So, to increase resilience, it's going to be obvious for me to say nature-based solutions, but you know, we face a sort of a double whammy. All climate change predictions show that we will have very unpredictable weather, and so we have to account for both drought and deluges from either a tropical storm or a hurricane. But specifically for a hurricane, you know, we're fortunate in that most of the houses are made out of concrete. That was something that after many, you know, hurricanes, you know, they changed the codes and so forth. They've made great strides in improving the cellular system, which was a big problem. We actually had to go and drive to like where cell towers, which ones were working so that we could send messages and whatever. So those things are happening. But I think many of the things that I talked about in my presentation are very similar to the sorts of things that we have to deal with. Is most of it's just like if everybody okay, so after Maria, I had this concept of like, I'm only as resilient as my preparations. Then my neighborhood is only as resilient as our collective efforts to prepare. And then you scale that on to, you know, barrio, to county, state, and what have you. And it really sort of becomes, you're ultimately dealing with what's the weakest link, you know, who didn't, you know, spend time, you know, and, you know, there is a big move to go towards renewable power, and that's going to help a lot. But I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much, Kevin. That's great. And I just want to apologize. I think our poll decided to close itself on its own accord. So if you didn't get an opportunity to respond, we will be sending out an evaluation and a follow-up email later on. But just to continue here with our Q&A, and this one is it's from Maya in our Q&A session, and this is for Alex here. It says, in restoration of dikes, wetlands, diked wetlands, part of the larger plan, is restoration of diked wetlands part of the larger plan for nature-based solutions as part of the Suisun City Solano Resiliency Plan? So I was just wondering if you had knowledge there, Alex, and could expand.
Sorry, was the question, are those types of restorations part of that plan?
Yes, restoration of diked wetlands, part of the larger plan.
Yeah, so that's actually what our current work with Coastal Quest is doing. Right now, there isn't, Suisun City doesn't have a plan to integrate nature-based solutions. So that's what our current work is doing right now is, you know, engaging the community, seeing what the community wants. So, you know, habitat restoration is, you know, part of, or, you know, one of the nature-based solutions that we are, you know, sharing educational materials on. But for the city, it's not something that is definitively in their planning as of now. But there have been restoration projects that have been taken part on the, like within the city on a smaller scale though.
Thank you, Alex. That's great. And great to have that partnership with you. I wanted to ask Ivanka, if you could share in your experience why funding specifically directed at community-based organizations is so important versus other types of funding.
So one of the things about, so some of the work that I've been doing with the EPA is to make sure that for the first time, small community-based organizations are able to seek out funding, because what we've seen in the past is when environmental dollars were there, usually the universities would apply for them. And by the time it came to the communities, there was no money left. And so this is an opportunity for the community to look at some of the things that are going on in the community and with the solutions that they have, because people, think about things and so this is their opportunity to take those things, work as a collective, put it on paper, and then say, we want to apply for a grant to make it work. And if they're working with A2 can help them in that process. But I think this is the first time in a long time, probably in 20 years, I've been doing this for 30 years, that community agencies have ever been able to go after federal dollars and have a great shot at getting the dollars. Prior to that, you could write a grant, but you wouldn't be able to get any dollars for it.
Thank you so much. And that, yes, it feels like there's a slight changing of the tides here, which is really exciting. Great. Well, we are almost at time. I don't know quite how that happened. It's been such a great, engaging showcase of information. So we just wanted to take a few minutes before we wrap up the webinar. We'd like to share our coastal funding database and our small grants program. So these are funding opportunities and resources to get funding. We wanted to make sure that everybody had before we wrapped. So I'm going to pass this over to Lilia, who's going to tell us a bit about our coastal funding database.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to try to go through this in under 1 minute in respect of everyone's time. So if you have to leave, please remember that there will be a recording of this coming around later. I dropped in the chat the link to our coastal funding database, which is now on our Coastal Quest website. If you were at part 1, you know that that is something that was really exciting for us coming down the pipeline. Our coastal funding database has grant opportunities that support a wide range of multi-benefit coastal solutions. Myself and one of my coworkers, Natalie, update it daily, actually, at this point. And there's about 5 new opportunities added each week, give or take. You can sign up to an email list. If you follow that link in the chat, you'll go to our coastal funding database website homepage, and you can sign up for emails that come out every other week. We have sort and filter functions now available on this funding database, so that's very exciting. And in the interest of time, I'll scoot on to the next thing I have to talk about. We have a Coastal Nature-Based Solutions Small Grants program. This program is for supporting new and early stage projects like the ones we've been talking about today. So this is offered by Coastal Quest. Some of the bullet points are going over kind of some of the goals we have for the program. We want to build resilience in vulnerable coastal communities. We want these projects to be community-driven, collaborative, and equitable, and provide multiple benefits to people and nature. And if we scoot to the next slide, I'll have a QR code for you. You can go ahead and scan that QR code. It'll take you directly to the flyer. The Coastal Quest page that has also more information about the small grants program is being dropped in the chat right now by myself. We are accepting applications through April 16th, and it is a very short application. So please do get on there and take a look and see if it applies. If you are a community-based or nonprofit organization, tribal or indigenous group, or local community leader based in or serving the Pacific region, this opportunity is for you. That includes U.S. Pacific territories, so don't forget about that. And I took 2 minutes, but I tried to go fast. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to email Coastal Quest. If you have questions about the funding database, I'll drop my email in the chat. Thank you all very much. And
that was amazing. That was amazing, Lilia. Thank you. And in the same vein, just looking at next steps here, after the this webinar series is complete, we'll be sharing the recording on our website so you can review some of the tools that were shared by our speakers today. We'll also be sending out an evaluation. So please keep an eye out for that. That really helps us navigate forward. What are people interested in learning about? What tools and resources are you looking for? So the evaluation will be capturing some of that information. So thank you for taking that extra time to fill that out. Make sure to apply for our small grant program if you're in those Pacific Northwest areas. And please share the opportunity to your networks. Let us know if you're sharing them too. We'd love to know where these resources are going or this information is going. Reach out if you have any questions, suggestions, or opportunities to collaborate, and be on the lookout for future webinars from Coastal Quest or tools that we're crafting based on your feedback. that feedback is really critical to us. I want to say a huge thank you to our speakers for your excellent presentations and discussion. Our speakers invite you to reach out to them with follow-up questions. So information here on how to connect with them. And we'll also be dropping that into the chat. Thank you, Lilia. Lots of information coming your way. Great. And to conclude today's webinar, thank you for joining us. And we look forward to future webinars with all of you. Take care.